Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to what I think is going to be one of the best sessions you're going to attend here at AEI, which is Revolutionize the Nordstrom Way Agent Before Association. I am Shauna Taroso, and I serve as one of the AEI governors this year. And I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker today. And Maura Neill is a realtor, instructor, and national speaker. But I have two fun facts to share with you all today. First, Maura was one of our top requested speakers to be here at AEI, so you asked and we delivered. And secondly, congratulations are in order because Maura just received word that she will be running the Boston Marathon in April, so congratulations. And with that, Maura Neill.
Good afternoon. Here's my remote. All right. Thank you so much for having me. I was thinking this morning, I was trying to remember how many times I've had the honor of being invited to be on a stage in front of all of you at AEI, and I'm pretty sure this is my 5th AEI. So either somebody really likes me or you want a member to just throw tomatoes at and heckle. But you letting me in and letting me come and speak to you time after time is such an honor and a privilege, and I really very much appreciate that. So I didn't actually apply to be here this year. As Shauna said, I got a phone call and I got the invitation, and I was supposed to be at the March 2020 AEI in San Diego, and we all know what happened in March of 2020. And this was the session I was going to present. So someone who had been on that committee, on that advisory board, remembered and put it forward. And this is a version of a class that I created back in 2012 for agents after I read a really incredible book called The Nordstrom Way. It's written by a top sales associate from Nordstrom. And if any of you have gone for a walk, about 2 blocks away, there's a beautiful Nordstrom. And he talks about their customer service model. Because Nordstrom is known in the retail world as having some of the best examples of one-on-one customer service, repeat business, clients coming back time and time again. They do things that we agents teach about doing or are told that we should do, like write personal handwritten thank you notes to their clients, deliver personalized service. And I thought to myself a few years ago, could we improve the value of membership from an association level if we start to apply some of those same concepts? Can we start to look at the association to member relationship, apply some customer service models from the retail industry, from hospitality, other companies that are known for phenomenal customer service, Starbucks, Ritz-Carlton, the Four Seasons. Think about Michelin star dining, where you have more people waiting on your table than you have sitting at the table. And it's not the big promises that we give. It's not us giving our members one more member benefit, another discount to a car rental agency, or one more discount plan to Office Depot on our printing. It's those small gestures. It's the things that make your members feel heard, whether they're in an association of 100 or 50,000. So I want to start off, though, with a couple of disclaimers. First, I've already said, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for bringing me back several years now. It's such an honor to get to be here with you. Usually, when I'm speaking to your members, I remind them to give a big round of applause for you all, for the staff. But I think that you all should give a big round of applause to your AEI advisory board because this is one of the best conference schedules I've seen for you guys, and I think they deserve a big round of applause. Second, here's why I'm not here, or here's not why I'm here, to tell you how to do your jobs. I'm a Realtor member. I'm a member of the Atlanta Realtors Association, the Georgia Association of Realtors, and of course, NAR. Staffing decisions and the way you run your offices are not my business. But what I hope you would get out of today, and the reason that hopefully you came here, and I know I have a big job, I have to keep you awake after lunch, right? You're all gonna have a little bit of a food coma. This is the second worst spot of the day because the worst one is the one that's right before happy hour, right? So why am I here? Not to tell you how to do your jobs, but maybe to change your mindset just a little. If I can influence a slight mindset shift on the way that you go back and you interact with your staff, the way that you encourage them to interact with the membership, and you can make one more member feel appreciated or heard, or make them feel that their concerns are being met, or at least they're able to voice them to people who care about what they have to say, then I've done my job. So let's get started. When I teach this class to your members, to my colleagues, to people who are working with consumers, and we're trying to get more business, right? My job for them is to help them sell another house, to retain one more client, to make an unhappy client into an ecstatic client. We talk about 3 distinct differences that they need to keep in mind when they're thinking about the customer relationship. The first one is, in our business, of course, we have to delineate the difference between customer and client. Right? A customer is someone that you interact with on the consumer level, and once they sign a brokerage agreement with you, they become your client. Well, if you happen to be at an association where the real estate agent has a choice, how many of you are in a market where you have realtors and non-realtors who are in the market together competing, right? Georgia's a big state for that, and I know there's a lot of other markets. Think about the difference between customer and client when it comes to your members. A customer is any one of those real estate agents who's deciding if they want to join your organization. How do you make them make that commitment? How do you prove to them that there's value to being a member? Secondarily, transaction versus experience. In my world, that's very simple. We can be transactional. We can just do the bare minimum that it takes to get the job done and get to the closing table and get my commission check. And that's the client who's going to go back and say, well, she just cared about getting her check and moving on. Or we can care about the experience. We can think about the member experience, the user experience. We can want them to walk away not just satisfied, but ecstatic. Because I'm going to tell you what, people don't go to Yelp or Zillow or Realtor.com and write a 5-star review because you met their expectations. In fact, most of the time that when we look at reviews for any organization, you see a high concentration of 5s and 1s. Because people only take the time to voice their opinions when they're ecstatic or when they're really pissed off, right? You see a lot of 5s and a lot of 1s. It's those people that are not even writing the review. Those are the ones that we need to target. We need to target the members whose expectations you're meeting. I'm a member because my broker says I have to be. I'm a member because I want to be able to access the MLS. The ones that we need to target to make their experience better are the ones who aren't ecstatic yet. They're not the ones who show up for conference. They're not the ones who run for leadership positions. They're not the ones who volunteer on committees. You've got them. And even if you've got some unhappy ones, we'll talk about them later. But it's those middle of the road folks. Because the really angry ones, you're not going to convert, right? The people who are like, the association gives me nothing. We can't worry about them. We're always going to have them be in the loud minority. So what can we do to improve the experience of the people in the middle, who right now just feel like you're meeting their expectations? And the first mindset shift is thinking about them as a client and not a customer. They are the client of the association. Now, I know if you're a state association, your client might be, according to your bylaws, the local associations. But it's not changing your bylaws, it's just changing the mindset shift. So I did a couple of informal polls and surveys on social media to a bunch of my colleagues. And so here's some good news, and I'm not going to read all this to you, and my slides will be available to you after the fact. But these are the things that they think you do well right now. And this is just a handful of the responses that I got on this survey. And I'll make sure that you can download these later so you can talk about them if you'd like. They really like when you give them snacks, by the way. So, realtors like to eat. That's how you get them to come to stuff. Now, here's where they thought that you could do a little better. And again, this was an informal survey. I only had about 50 or 55 people responding. But I said, from a service standpoint, what do you think your associations could do better? Now, nobody got really nasty. But look at the very last one. Remember that members are customers. They think we can do better at that. And quite frankly, when I say we, I know I'm talking about you and your staff. I'm also talking about our leadership teams, right? because our leadership teams in some ways are extensions of your realtor association staff. They are the public-facing voice of real estate. They are interacting with you the most. So maybe a little bit of infiltrating your leadership training with, this is how you can be a better leader, how you can also treat the members as your customers. Maybe that's a good place to start as well. But let's get back to Nordstrom, because that's the title of the presentation. So Nordstrom is known from the beginning, from its very beginnings at the turn of the 1900s, the turn of the 20th century when they opened. They were a humble shoe store based right outside of Seattle, and it was one location run by a man named Mr. Nordstrom. And he had a philosophy that he then passed on to his children and his grandchildren who have continued to run the company. And he said, the only thing that we have going for us is the way we take care of our customers. Now, if you've ever shopped at Nordstrom, you know that they've got a lot more than that. They have some of the best retail buyers in the industry, so they have beautiful product, they have competitive pricing, they have amazing selection, they have some designers and retail providers that are exclusive to their stores. They also do things like feature local artists, so every store has a different feeling. In some of their flagship stores, you get a little restaurant, a little cafe. They're beautiful, they're clean, they're well lit, and there's something magical about those fitting room mirrors because they always make me look at least 2 sizes smaller. But this was his philosophy that he has passed down from when he just owned one humble shoe store. The only thing we have going for us is the way we take care of our customers. And he taught his sales associates this, and his sales associates let that feeling permeate out into their work on the sales floor. They were taught that every customer was a path to 10 more customers because they will refer the people they know. Now, you may not need referrals in your association, especially if you have to be a member to be in the MLS, but you might get those advocates who believe in the work that you do, who believe in the value of membership, who spread that message to their brokerage, or they spread that message to their networking group. So we need those advocates. We need those people who are taking the word of what you do and how valuable it is out to other members just like them and infecting them with that positive spirit. So let's start with association staff. So one of the things that I love about Nordstrom, and I know this is very blurry, it's hard to find a copy of this. They're not really supposed to be any online. A friend of mine who managed a Nordstrom in Bellevue, Washington, sent me this several years ago. This is their employee handbook. Now, I've worked retail. When I was in high school and college, I worked in retail stores, and my employee handbook was about this big, reminded me of my dad's MLS books, and it was a lot of pages that I was never going to read. And you'd have to sit in your orientation, and they'd spew out the company philosophy at you for 8 hours. You'd fall asleep. It felt like really bad CE, right? And this is their handbook. It's a piece of 5x8 cardstock, and it says, "Welcome to Nordstrom. We're glad to have you with our company. Our number one goal is to provide outstanding customer service, set both your personal and professional goals high. We have great confidence in your ability to achieve them." So our employee handbook is very simple, and we have only one rule. Use good judgment in all situations. So one of the basic training tenets, one of the basic ways that they train their staff, whether it's from the janitorial staff all the way up to the management with the sales associates and customer service experience, all of that, everybody in between, use good judgment. They empower their employees to do what's right for the customer in the moment. They don't micromanage. If you trust your staff, empower them to use good judgment. Train them so well, provide such impeccable staff training that you know that when a member comes to them with a problem or a complaint, they don't have to come to you. I mean, unless it's big and it's going to be a legal battle or something really bad is going on. But for a minor problem, empower your staff to use good judgment. You'll have happier staff. You'll have happier members whose problems and complaints are listened to faster. In fact, there's part of Nordstrom lore, and this is legend, it is not true, and if you go on to Snopes.com, you know that website where you can see if it's fake news or not. You can Google, you can put Nordstrom into Snopes and you can find this story. So there's a story about Nordstrom customer service that a man pulled up to the store, a store here in Washington, and he went into the sales associate and he said, "I'm very unhappy and I need a refund." And the sales associate said, "Okay, sir, what can I do? What are you returning?" And he said, "The tires on my truck." Now, if you know anything about Nordstrom, they don't sell tires for your truck. It's not Sears, it's not AutoZone, right? It's not Walmart. And he said, "I'm very unhappy with these tires, and I know that I bought them here, and I want a refund." And he produced a receipt that was crumpled and faded, and there was no store name on it. And he was very adamant that he had bought those tires at Nordstrom. And the sales associate gave him a refund and created a raving fan. Now, of course, like I said, it's myth. But that's an example of how amazing the customer service is there, that these are the stories that get spun like tales around a campfire. And listen to some of the things that Nordstrom employees say. "I'm a customer-oriented service person. You're looking for something. I'm determined I'm going to help you find it." Think about some of the calls and requests you get from your members, even when they seem unreasonable. When I think about my clients, right? My clients, especially in the market we've been in the last 2 to 3 years during COVID with low inventory and quickly rising prices, some of my clients have what we call champagne taste on a beer budget. But here's the thing. If you train yourself and your staff to listen to what the customer wants, explain to them what you can do for them, you can spin it in such a way that what you end up providing for them, they think is what they wanted all along. That's sales 101. If you can help them see that you're going to find them the thing that they're looking for, the value piece that they need in their membership that probably already exists, they just need it explained to them in a different way, you create a raving fan. What about this one? "If it's not nailed down, I'll find it for a customer. I don't make commission on everything, but it's part of the service I provide." Now, Nordstrom employees like me work on commission, and I know you would be in very different jobs if we told you that you had to work on commission. But think about the things that you do or the things that your staff does that you go above and beyond. You don't get paid extra for the overtime that you work. You don't get paid to go to the evening event. Your governmental affairs staff who work long hours when they're at the Capitol, when Congress is in session, when you have a YPN committee who says, "We want to have a YPN networking night that starts at 8 p.m. and we need staff to be there." If you've got happy staff who love working with your members and happy members who love coming to events, it's not a matter of working out what your hourly rate is. No realtor wants to work out their hourly rate. And you don't either. I tell members all the time when I'm talking about association work, I say, you got to be sure that our staff loves what they do, or they wouldn't keep these jobs for very long. It's not easy to be staff for realtors, but the better trained your staff and the better their mindset, the happier they are to serve the membership. And finally, this is my favorite, never judge a book by its cover. If you treat the kid buying the $19.95 belt the same as a businessman buying a $1,995 Oxford suit, you'll be successful. That kid might become a customer for life. We want the members to be so happy that they want to be your customer for life. We want them to start as a member who just pays their dues. And we want them to believe in membership so much that they join a committee. And they come to conference, and they start investing in RPAC, and they run for a leadership position. And they become such a believer in the association and the value it provides that they go out and infect their offices, and they infect those committees with enthusiasm. Because when you have happy members who are involved and understand what you do for them, they preach your gospel, and they make your job easier. Would you agree? All right, second. Let's talk a little bit about core values. So what I love about when I talk about Nordstrom is I also get a chance to talk about Zappos. Now, Zappos was kind of Nordstrom 2.0. You remember back during the startup boom in the early 2000s when all these internet startup companies came along, and Zappos decided they were going to be a humble shoe store too, but they weren't going to be brick and mortar. They were just going to be online, and people thought they were crazy. Just like the people thought, and we'll talk about Nordstrom being called crazy by their competitors, but people said, you're crazy if you think you can sell shoes online. What's the number one rule of selling shoes? People have to try them on. And Zappos said, well, we got that covered, because if they get their shoes and they don't fit and they walk around in them a little bit and they don't like them, they can send them back. And their competitors said, you're going to go bankrupt. They almost did. But they had an amazing CEO that they hired right at the brink when every other online startup was facing the same thing. Tony Hsieh came in and he said, we need to examine our core values. So think about this from a staff training perspective, because I still want to talk about staff for a minute. You do a strat plan for your members. Do you do something similar for your staff? And if you don't, think about adding that as part of your annual planning that you do with your staff members. But I would encourage you, instead of talking about the things that you talk about year over year, shift the focus to core values. So what Tony Hsieh did was he surveyed every employee of Zappos, and he said, what do you think our core values are? What do you think the values are that we operate under every day? In our dealings with the customer, in our dealings with vendors, and in our dealings with each other. And I didn't have time in this 45-minute session to show you this great video on Zappos core values, but I'm going to give you a link at the end of the presentation so you can go watch it yourself. But it's the employees of Zappos talking about their 10 core values. And some of them are pursue growth and learning. Well, we always want our staff to keep learning. How many RCEs are there in here? Thank you for your dedication. I know that's not easy. We are constantly promoting learning amongst not just our members, but also our staff. Another one of their core values is create fun and a little weirdness. Why not have a little fun while you're at work? Doesn't that make the day happier? If you're getting your work done, we should be able to celebrate it. But looking at the core values and getting the staff involved in creating them, they threw out their mission statement. And they said, we need to have a set of values that dictates the way that we deal with each other and our customers. And then I want, if you're training your staff and you're talking to them more about the customer and client relationship, encourage them to be the member. Put yourself in the member's shoes. I think a lot about my experiences as a customer. So just this morning, so I got up at 4 because I'm on East Coast time, right? So I flew in last night. I was in bed by 8:30 because I was like, wow, I'm exhausted. So I got up at 4 and I was like, okay, well, the market doesn't open till 6. So I drank some coffee in my room and I did a little work and I went down to the market at 6 o'clock and I got in line and nobody paid attention to me. And now we're starting to line up, and it might have been some of you, and there's a line forming and we're all standing there and we're thinking, hello, are we invisible? And finally, the manager bustles over and he's like, guys, I'm real sorry, we don't have any coffee. I'm sorry. Who's sorry? You open at 6. He's like, well, we're running a little behind today. Oh, and we don't have hot water either, so if you want hot tea, we don't have that either. That's not what I needed to hear at 6. But they fixed it. They said, we're going to open, we open downstairs at 6:30, so if you would like to go down and have the buffet, you can go down there. Now, that was smart marketing because that was an upcharge, because, you know, my $15 breakfast at the market now cost me $30 downstairs, but I got my coffee before they got it working up there, but they did have the espresso machine. And so they were giving people espresso drinks for the same price as a drip coffee once they got that up and going, which was a good way to put a Band-Aid on that problem. But what do you expect when you're a customer? Think about it. Think about some of the nicest experiences you've had. I don't have any status at all with Renaissance hotels, but when my husband and I checked into a hotel in Provence, we got a nice little note. That was a small gesture that I wasn't expecting. A little bottle of champagne, a nice little note. Now, when you have status with a hotel or an airline, maybe that's expected, right? But this made me think I might stay at Renaissance a little more often. I love when I do have status with Delta because I travel a good bit. I love that moment when I get that little note, and it's not every time. I don't know how they know, but about every 10th or 11th time, and it's never the same flight crew, I get a little note. I get somebody who says, thank you for flying with us. We appreciate your business. Now, if you have, for example, I'll use Georgia as an example. We have 52,000 members. You can't write handwritten notes to all of them. You can't write handwritten notes to all 15,000 that I have in Atlanta. And maybe we can't write handwritten notes to 2,000 in one of your associations, or even 500. But think about adding those small gestures. If you have a member who does something particularly nice for you, maybe write them a note. If you have a member who had a complaint or had a problem, but you were able to resolve it and they thanked you, send them a note, send them an email. What can you do to just improve that little bit of extra? Because here's what realtors said to me, 119 realtors, 71% of them said, is there a difference between member benefits, what you expect, and customer service, that little piece that makes you feel extra special? Of course there's a difference. We expect it when we go out to eat. One of my favorite comparisons, though, is there's a place down at home where my husband and I like to go on Sunday nights. And for a while, before the pandemic, we were there about 3 out of 4 Sunday nights in a month. Now, I'll tell you the reason why. The food is good, but Sunday night is half-price bottle of wine night. So, I mean, hello. And they have white tablecloths and low lighting and candles and really delicious Italian food, handmade pasta for a reasonable price. And we would go almost every Sunday night, and without fail, 80% of the time we got seated with the same waiter. And every single time, he would walk over and he would say, well, hello, welcome to DePaulo. My name is Justin. I'll be your server tonight. Have you dined with us before? And after a few months, I finally said, Justin, do you not recognize us? And he was taken aback. And I said, you know, we're here about every Sunday, give or take, one a month. If you don't recognize me, I'm a little insulted because I give you a good tip. We order the same bottle of wine every Sunday. It's okay for you to be a little less formal with us because I would actually appreciate knowing that you remember me rather than you giving me this formal spiel. And he said, okay. He said, well, we're really big on customer service here and we want to treat you very professionally. And I said, if you're big on customer service, my name's Maura. This is my husband, Ben. You don't have to remember our names, but at least tell me that you remembered my face. So then a couple weeks went by and I was traveling and we had mid-year and some other stuff. And I remember we walked in about a month later and we sat down and he came walking over and he said, hello, Maura. Hello, Ben. Welcome back. And behind his back, he had the bottle that we always order, and he said, is this what you'll be having tonight? And I said, good job, Justin. But here's the comparison. Every single morning, without fail, for a 9 or 10 month period, I was going through the drive-thru at my local McDonald's, which is, by the way, across the street from DePaulo, because they have unsweet tea, and yes, I'm from the South, and I drink unsweet tea, and that's weird, I get it. They have unsweet tea for $1. And every single morning, I would go and get my unsweet tea. And Maria from Guatemala was always in the window. She didn't take my money. She's the one who handed me my tea. So she was always there. And she would hand me my tea, and she said, Maura, unsweet tea again. I think it because you sweet enough. And I felt that I was getting better service at a drive-thru at McDonald's than when Justin was pretending he didn't remember that I was there every week. $1, $100 dinner. It's okay if you provide the service of the woman in the McDonald's drive-thru. It doesn't have to be white tablecloth. It doesn't have to be grand gestures. It can be as simple as remembering someone's name, sending them a thank you note, remembering their birthdays. Something. And I know if you've got 15,000 members or 20 or 50, you'll have to think of something that's scalable that works for you. And that's the point of customer service. I truly believe that it doesn't matter if you are the only staff person at your association of 50 and you're part-time, or you manage 50, 100, 200,000 realtors. You can figure out what's scalable and can work for you to make your members feel like they are getting McDonald's drive-through service from Maria, or the new and improved white tablecloth service from Justin. But think about it. Would you want, if you were a member, would you want the service that you provide? Would you feel special? Would you feel heard? Would you feel like your membership cannot possibly be improved anymore? Because I think what we have is a great product, and we don't need to improve it, but sometimes we have to prove it, and that can be the part that's difficult. All right, and then what can you do to make every experience of your members unforgettable? You saw the list of good news, right? They think you do a lot of stuff right. For the most part, I reached out to some people and I said, I've heard you complain before. Tell me some of the really bad stuff. And I didn't get those responses. The improvement stuff was little. They already think we do great, right? So here's what Nordstrom did. So back in the 50s and 60s, Nordstrom started to expand eastward across the country, and they were coming head-to-head with some of their biggest competitors that they'd not been in competition with before in the same market. We're talking Riches and Macy's and Lord & Taylor and Melvin's and all of these really big established department stores on the other side of the country. And Nordstrom started to change things up a little bit. So they did some crazy things. Like, for example, they took the women's shoes out of the shoe department and put them where? With the women's clothes. And their competitors, and think about we're talking like Mad Men style, right? Like a room full of men, no offense, men, but a room full of men making decisions about women's clothes, because that's what happened in the 50s and 60s, right? And their competitors said, that's crazy. Those women aren't going to know where to find the shoes. Because we're just, the little woman. But what happened instead? Women would go in and buy a new dress, and they know they've got 5 pairs of shoes at home that go with this dress. Men, keep your mouth shut. And they'd take that dress, and the shoes are right there. Oh, and so are the purses and the belts. So they were like, oh, I could wear the shoes I have at home, but look at these. They also put seating areas in the stores so that the men would have a place to sit and complain about the women while the women shopped. And their competitors thought they were crazy because to put in seating areas, they had to take product off the floor. And back in the mid-century, 1950s, 1960s, taking product off the floor was not what you did. You put more product on the floor. They also widened the walking aisles for women with strollers and people with wheelchairs and walkers and canes who are mobility challenged. More product off the floor. They put restaurants in. Their competition said, what are you, a restaurant or a retailer? You're going to go bankrupt. But instead, what they knew was people wanted a place to go grab a cup of coffee and a piece of pie or a sandwich and then continue shopping. They put their housewares into sections that looked like the area of the house that it served. It was kind of unheard of at the time that you would have a bed made with bedding. I mean, think about what was on TV at the time. When Carol and Mike Brady shared a bed, it was okay because Carol had a turtleneck on and a dress that went to the ground, right? And I don't know how Lucy and Desi ever had a kid because they slept in separate beds. It was immodest, but they sold more product that way. And where did they get all these crazy ideas? They listened. They listened to the customer. I'm going to brag a little bit on my state right now, and not just because they're in the room over here. We just got done doing a series of focus groups with our members to get their opinions and their input on some possible changes or adjustments or improvements to some of the ways that we run the association. When's the last time you did a focus group? And I don't mean just a survey that you send out on SurveyMonkey and you cross your fingers and you go, oh, I hope people respond. I'm talking about inviting them into a room, having a discussion, having people there writing down their answers. And you have to ask the questions very carefully. You have to create questions that don't show bias and they're not leading questions, but to really get the feedback of your membership. It'll take some time and effort and maybe some money because you might have to give them snacks. But create an experience. And here's the other thing. If they feel they're being listened to, it almost doesn't matter if changes happen. Because sometimes the changes that they want aren't feasible, right? They might say, oh, it would be great if you could put a coffee bar in so that every time I come to the association, I can make myself a latte. That might not be feasible, but you heard their suggestion. You gave it to leadership and staff, and there could be a discussion about it. Because great service inspires loyalty, creates longer relationships, creates mutual respect, because you're listening. You don't have to, if the changes aren't feasible or they can't happen right now, that's okay. You're hearing them. Fosters certainty that investment is worthwhile and makes them feel valued, important, satisfied, cared for, appreciated, and encourages them to be engaged more. There's a great quote from Patrick McCarthy, who wrote the book, The Nordstrom Way. He says, the more information I have, the better I can serve the customer. It's not just my deal. It's not an I experience. It's a we experience. Reaching out and getting input in creative ways creates that we experience. One of the things I do as a realtor is I tell my customers, I tell my clients that we are partners in this transaction. I work for you, I have a job, but I can't do my job if you're not my partner in it. If you don't disclose things properly on your property disclosure, and then you get sued for non-disclosure, you're gonna pull me in on that. So if you become my partner and I tell you to do those things and you listen and we work cooperatively, we're not gonna have that problem. How do we create a we experience with our members? Make them feel like they're on the team. Give them some shared responsibility in their own experience. It's not your job to just coddle them. And if they think that, then they're down on the 1 stars and you're not gonna win that one over, right? We don't need to care about them. We're focusing on the middle. And reaching out to those who don't reach out themselves. Getting new voices and new blood involved. And getting, if you have a leadership academy, identifying those possible future leaders and making sure that people are coming to conference or coming to your education days and they're seeing firsthand the work that you're doing and you're encouraging them to be involved. And then lastly, you have to set their expectations. You have to set the expectations of your staff, of course, on what you think is appropriate for their relationships with members. Some of my best relationships in this industry are my friendships, not just with my local association staff, especially with my Georgia staff, but with so many of you. I'm allowed to be friends with all of you because I'm not your member, right? We can go hang out and have a beer. Those expectations might be different when they're my staff of the organization that I'm a member of. So your staff needs to know if they need to draw a line, right? And what the social media guidelines are. But also you need to set expectations of your members on what they can expect from you. Because there are some realtors with some pretty unrealistic expectations. They think that you are the help. This is one of my favorite examples. Nordstrom drew a line in the sand when things started getting real crazy around Black Friday, right? You remember when I was in college, my favorite thing to do on the day after Thanksgiving was get up at like 4:30 in the morning, and I know Lauren Daniel does this with her mama. Get up at like 4:30 in the morning, and my mom and I would get in the car and we'd drive down to Tampa to the mall, because I lived in a little tiny town in Florida. And the first stop we would make, we'd get there right when they opened, and we'd go to Barney's Coffee. and we'd get our disgusting little flavored coffees that, I loved back, and we'd dump all our sugar and creamer and flavors in them and stuff, and we'd get sugared up and caffeinated for the day, and then we would shop till we dropped. Now, stores are opening on Thanksgiving night. Sometimes they're opening on midnight on Wednesday, and Nordstrom said, nope. Our employees deserve a holiday with their families, and we will not open until Friday. We don't care if we lose money because somebody goes and buys their Gucci belt from, some other store that's willing to be open. This is what you can expect from us. Set your expectations. When your staff has an off day, give them permission that unless the building is burning down, they do not have to answer an email from a member, or a phone call from a member, or a text message from a member. Set some firm guidelines to give them what Nordstrom employees get. And lastly, I know I'm running out of time, and I'm going to finish up, I promise. One of my favorite books is called Setting the Table. It's by Danny Meyer. And on the resource page that I'm going to give you at the end, there's a list of books that I think are really great on customer service. This is one of my favorites. And he has a quote in the book where he says, "Service is the technical delivery of a product. Hospitality is how the delivery of that product makes its recipient feel. Service is a monologue. We decide how we want to do things, and we set our own standards for service. But hospitality, on the other hand, is a dialogue. It requires thoughtful listening to the other person and follow up with a thoughtful, gracious, appropriate response. It takes both great service and great hospitality to get to the top." Now, for me as a realtor, this means I can do the bare minimum that gets my client from contract to closing, and I can get paid and I can move on, and they probably won't write me a review because they're going to be the right in the middle person that I barely met their expectations. They can't really complain, but they're not really ecstatic. So what does that look like to you? What's your service versus hospitality? What's your bare minimum versus those small gestures that make you rise to the top, that make your members say, I love being a realtor and a member of that organization? And in his book, he tells a story about his own service experience and what he learned from it, and it was a bucket list trip to go fly fishing in Wyoming. Now, he's a city boy. He was born in Chicago. He went to school in Paris and London at the Le Cordon Bleu, and then he went to New York City and opened his first restaurant. He opened Union Street Grill, and then he opened several more. You've probably heard of Shake Shack. That's Danny Meyer. And he tells a story that he was going on his bucket list trip, and he bought all the stuff. He bought the waders and the rod, and he learned to tie his own flies, and this was before YouTube. So he wasn't watching videos. He was reading instruction manuals and tying these little tiny flies that looked like little tiny bugs. And he got out, and he met his guide at early in the morning, and they waded out in the river, and his guide started bending over and picking up rocks and putting them down. Up rocks and putting them down, and they'd walk a little further, and he finally said, "What are you doing?" "I want to learn to fish." "When am I going to learn to cast?" And the guide said, "My goal for you is to have the most successful experience you can today. And what I mean by that is at the end of the day, we're going to be over on that riverbank, we're going to light a fire, and we're going to cook the fish that you caught. But in order to do that, I have to find out which fish are biting and where they are. I'm looking for the larvae, I'm looking for the insects and the eggs that the fish have laid. And then I'm going to be able to tell you which fly to tie on and teach you how to cast, and you're going to catch a fish." And he said that his customer service philosophy then is now to teach his staff to think like a fly fisherman. When you have an unhappy member, when you have someone with a complaint, or someone that just isn't getting engaged, or maybe they used to be and they're not anymore, ask the right questions. Look for the story behind that story. Collect the dots so you can connect the dots. Because if you can make that one person who's that 3 or 4 star rating happy, now they become your raving fan. Take money that you're spending on things that aren't important. Look at those budgets when you do your strat plan. If there are things that, if you can trim the fat a little bit for things that you really don't need and put money back into the customer experience, now you're using the Zappos model. You're not spending money on things that aren't important anymore. If there's something that's not getting you a return on your investment, get rid of it. Put it back into the customer experience, the member experience. And then listen to people when they complain. Find out what they're unhappy about. Bill Gates says your most unhappy customers are your greatest source of learning. So think about the next couple of answers. Customer service you receive from your realtor association. These are the ones we need to focus on right here. The 2s, 3s, and 4s. You're never going to convert these. Just, they're okay. You're always going to have haters, right? It's fine. And these people already love you. They love you. So just keep doing what you're doing, but we've got to convert these middle ones. And then finally, the good news, the best news of all is 71% that I talked to said that they love what you're doing from a service standpoint. Great. And the last little quotes that I got, the staff brokerage agent partnership is the key to successful associations. I believe that. I also believe that if led by the right leaders on your staff, the association is part of your agent's support teams. I have my support team. I have my husband, who's my business partner. I have my lender. I have my home inspector. I have my closing attorney. And on the volunteer side of things, I have really, really great staff. And they said, oops, association staff is awesome, and we appreciate you all. That was a direct quote as well. So I'll leave you with this, and then I'm going to give you my little link. This quote by Maya Angelou. Just think about this. Pin it on your wall, write it on the mirror in your bathroom. I've learned that people will forget what you said, forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. So all you got to do is make your members feel good. Here is a link to the resource page that I promised you. It's a quick survey, full disclosure. It asks if you want to join my email newsletter. It's once a month. I have no sales pitch. It's just fun stuff and good reading. If you don't want to, that's cool. When you hit submit, it brings you to the resource page. If I can answer any questions for you, please reach out. There's my contact information. Talk to me while I'm here. Thank you for all you do for the realtors, and enjoy the rest of your conference.